anyway, I'm really not much of a speaker, kind of out of my element up here, but I appreciate the opportunity to be allowed to speak. And so, you know, I was told I was wanted to go over the day of the explosion, but I thought, well, I better give a little background of that Upper Big Branch mine. Probably one of the most unsafe mines I've ever worked in or around, and I've been a coal miner for 35 years. The ventilation, which is, in my mind, the most important aspect of mining, the whole end of that mine, they couldn't ventilate it. And they really weren't worried about it, as long as they could fool the mine inspectors and camouflage things to get them, because the inspectors, they did withdrawals on many occasions over ventilation. So, but they had their ways. They thumbed their noses at the laws. They thought they didn't have to obey the laws. And anyway, in July of '09, I came home from work. I worked the evening shift. And I got in the bed like normal, I thought, but my wife said, "What's wrong?" I said, "There's nothing wrong." She said, "No, I can tell there's something wrong." And she was right. We'd been hitting explosive levels of methane. There's not enough air. And I said, "Well, just let me say this. If something happens to me, find you a lawyer." I said, "because there's a lot of wrong up there at that mine. And they won't take the steps to correct it." It was push, 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 load coal, which I know that's why we're there. But you can load coal safely and properly, but I guess they had a different agenda. And a lot of people have told me, "Well, why didn't you quit?" Well, my daddy taught me, you don't quit a job till you get a job. So, you know, okay, yeah, just up and quit. No, you can't do that. Fact is, I was seeking employment at a UMWA mine at the time it exploded, because I worked in the UMW for 20 years. Massey bought us out, made it non-union, and I thought to myself, well, Mom taught me not to jump out of the frying pan and into the fire. So I'm not going to another non-union mine. If I go to another mine, I'm going to a union mine, where the safety record is tremendously better. But working up there, it was like a cult-like atmosphere. You kind of run around like zombies. You knew you didn't say certain things around certain people, it gets back. You would disappear, just like in a cult. If they, you know, I'm not saying they were a cult, but it was a cult-like atmosphere. And they routinely dismissed people to keep that fear over the workforce. And so you kind of just went on. And it got to the point where I was scared every day going underground. In all my years I'd worked, I'd never felt this way. But we would start in, and I would sit in the man trip, and I would just look at the sky and the mountains, and I would feel like, well, you know, this might be the last time I see these sights. And, you know, I hated that. But I knew the problems in there with the methane, and so I said, well, get a good look at it. And I talked to Spanky. He was one of the guys killed in the explosion the week before it happened. He said, "Goose, there's no air on the tail of the long wall." I know most of you don't know what I'm talking about, but I said, well, if there's no air down there, that's your return airway that's supposed to take out the dust and the gas. So, and I knew that section. I had worked it in by the long wall. I knew. I said, well, if it's not ventilating right, she's filling up with methane back there. And our section, we would go underground. Anemometer wouldn't even turn. Anemometer is what we measure our speed of air. And it just takes a little whiff to make them wheels turn. Wouldn't even turn in our main intake. This was following the day shift. Man, this place is bad. But anyway, that's just to give you a little background. Okay, the day of the explosion, we went underground. I was about 300 feet, luckily. And I was sitting in the man trip, and I was looking out the outside like I always do. And I saw a bright light, brightest light I ever saw. I knew it was a reflection off of a car windshield. But I sat there and I stared at that, and I elbowed my butt. Man, check that out. That's the brightest light I've ever saw in my life. Anyway, in a matter of seconds, I felt a slight breeze coming from inside. I knew that was wrong. I thought that feels like a thunderstorm blowing up. Anyway, I realized there's no thunderstorms in here. So I started getting concerned, and then it went to picking up. I said, uh-oh, let's get out of here, boys. I knew something was wrong. The guy beside him, he just grabbed my belt, and we took off. Hadn't went very far, and it became like a hurricane. Debris blowing. You got to remember, we were probably 3 miles at least from the point of the explosion. And I put my head down because I couldn't see. The air done filled up. And I just yelled out, boys, don't fall. You don't need to fall here. Well, I didn't know what was coming. I just knew. I said, the outside not very far, but you got to get there. And so we stumbled out. I immediately made a right-hand turn, turned and looked, and there was buckets and what have you flying out the portal. You could see the whoosh of the air. Before I made it out, I felt like my feet were going to leave the ground, like I might go airborne. I said, don't want to go airborne. That wouldn't be good. And so I slowed down. I said, well, if I run too fast, that air felt like it was going to pick me up. But we got outside, and some of them guys said, must have been a big roof fall in there. I said, boys, that wasn't a roof fall. They said, what do you think it is, Goose? I said, mine blew up. I said, there's no roof fall going to create what we just experienced anywhere. But anyway, we hung around the mine, and I'd watch my watch and say, I knew how long it took the guys to get out of the mine, and that's that we were going to relieve. And I said, well, time went by, so they had time to get out on the man trip. They didn't. I said, well, it would take longer to walk. I said, maybe they made it walk, or will. But, you know, things were getting a little chaotic. And so finally we got word that some men were coming out. The management personnel had banded a small group together to go underground before any mine rescue or anyone got in there. And so they had went under, and we heard they were bringing out some men. That's all we knew. There were some mine cars in the portal. I moved those out of the way so they'd have a clear shot. And when they arrived, and I saw in the man trip, I said, oh my God. There was 9 men on that section crew. One of them somehow got his self-rescuer on. They were on their way outside. They weren't up in the explosion point. And the other 8, we got them out of man trip. They appeared dead. I said, I'm gonna do what I can. So I performed CPR on the guys. The other guys were helping. You know, it felt like a combat zone. Your dead buddies laying all around you. Somebody else, we found a faint heartbeat. I took an oxygen tank over there. That man survived. He looked just like the other 7. 7 of them didn't, of the initial guys we got out. And after it was determined they were no longer alive, we just carried them over to on the parking lot, stacked them up. And I said, lay a blanket down. We're not laying them on these gravels. And then when we'd lay one down, I'd put their hands up. I wasn't going to leave them laying like that. You got to have some respect. But anyway, after that, I walked over and sat down, and I just cried because we still had a lot of my buddies, Timmy's 2 nephews, Griff, Eddie and Ricky, Rex, Spanky, Joe, and you know, many more. They were still in there, and I knew where these guys were found. I knew there was probably no hope for the other guys. And I had to watch Timmy's son. He worked the evening shift also. I called Timmy Grizz, very dear friend of mine. His son worked there, and the kid just walked around, and I'd hear him ask company personnel any word, and they'd say no. And, you know, that brought tears to my eyes. I was, man, that boy, I know, but he doesn't. But that was very sad. It hurt me just watching the kid. So there was a whole lot more trauma than that. The people on the outside, like my wife, I couldn't get to a telephone. In fact, they wouldn't let me use it to start with. And there was emergency vehicles everywhere. I think they came up Route 3 for hours. Even after I got home that night, they were still going. And all she could do was sit there and listen to them sirens one after another. Marty, Cecil's chief of staff, he was in Charleston at the time, and he was concerned. He was calling, trying to find something out. Mindy had heard, and my neighbor, that I was one of them that was initially killed. I don't know how that got started, but the fear and trauma that she suffered, and Marty and my son, they told me he collapsed in his front yard and cried. So, you know, it goes a long way. Just like the fellows that were killed, how their families suffered, someone mentioned earlier. It's not only the families, they probably are hit the hardest, no doubt, but the whole communities in which these men live suffers. Because especially in the coal mining world, a coal miner will help anybody do anything at any time. Whatever they need, they'll be there. But I'm still on that hill. I haven't came off of it yet. I'd like to, because I know somehow my wife has put up with me. I'm not the happy-go-lucky. I try to get that way every once in a while. Sometimes I think I am, but then I go back to just doing nothing. I have no motivation, but I'm trying to recover all those things. But I'll give her credit. She's been there for me the whole way. She hasn't wavered a bit. She hasn't gotten mad at me, and she easily could. I haven't been mean to her by any means. I'm just not being me, and I just want to be me again. And I'm looking forward to that day. I have problems. I'm under the care of a psychiatrist, medication. I can't sleep without sleeping pills. I've never been that way my whole life. And I tried last week not to take one, and I never went to sleep till 11 o'clock the next night. I said, well, I guess I still need them. But I would like to say that in order to stop these companies like Massey that just continually thumb their nose at the laws, they think the laws don't matter to them or that they could care less. One way of not stopping it is doing nothing. Like the bill Richard and Mr. Miller put out, I think that would have went a long way by strengthening those laws and making the people responsible pay a heavy price. I like to say they need spanked and spanked hard. But yeah, if we do nothing, which the vote on that bill was essentially to me doing nothing, some things need to be done just to let these companies understand and see. And that bill had a whole lot of provisions that would have made them mind. It's a shame you got to make a mind like a little kid, but now I've lived it. But it, you know, there's tougher things happen than what would happen to a little kid if it doesn't mind. And I think April the 5th proved that out. But hopefully something will be done. And I guess I'll just close by saying those 29 men, I'll always miss you, and you'll always be with me.